I died for 20 minutes. No, that's not a figure of speech or a dramatic way to start a story. I really died. My heart stopped. My brain was deprived of oxygen. And for the paramedic team fighting for me, I was already gone. But what I saw on the other side, the darkness that swallowed me, the whispers of the void, and what I was asked to do when I came back, changed not only my life, but everyone's life inside a packed courtroom. But before all that, I was just Anna, 40 years old, with a stable job in an accounting office, a life without much excitement, but one I enjoyed. And that day, in particular, was perfect. The afternoon sun warmed my face, the wind tangled my hair, and the music in my headphones sounded like the soundtrack to a movie with a happy ending. I was on my bicycle, heading home. I felt at peace, you know? One of those rare sensations that everything was exactly where it should be. As if I had finally found my place in the world, my balance. Little did I know that peace was seconds away from shattering into 1,000 pieces. I was in the bike lane, in my corner. The screech of tires on the asphalt, loud, tore through the sound of my music. I turned my head, and all I saw was a blur of metal coming straight at me. I didn't have time to scream. I didn't have time to feel fear. Just the impact, the shock. It was strange. I didn't feel pain at first. A ringing sound took over everything, and suddenly I was lying on the hot asphalt. I saw blurs, red and blue lights flashing against the tree leaves, the smell of burning rubber mixed with something metallic. I heard distant, muffled voices. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, we're losing her. I tried to say I was there, that I was fighting, but my body no longer obeyed me. It was as if my consciousness was detaching from it, like a dry leaf falling from a branch. And then, the sharp, continuous beep of a heart monitor, and silence. That's where my first life ended. And the second, the most unbelievable of all, was about to begin. But before that hot asphalt, before the light and that mission that would change everything, my life wasn't poetic at all. It was gray. I know I described that day as perfect, and it was. But the truth? That peace was new, rare. Most of my days weren't like that. It was just a succession of hours. My routine was a clock that never ran late. Wake up, black coffee with no sugar, the same traffic, the same elevator. My world was a 2x2 cubicle, with a computer that hummed softly and a pile of invoices that never diminished. I was an accountant, and my life fit perfectly into an Excel spreadsheet, organized, predictable, and with no room for the unexpected. I was good at what I did, but I never asked myself if I liked doing it. It was just what I did. My relationships also seemed to follow a script. Sunday lunch at my mom's house, where conversations were always the same. How's work, honey? Are you eating right? I loved my family, don't get me wrong, but there was an abyss between us, a space full of things we never had the courage to say. I had a younger sister, Marina, and we texted almost every day. But if you asked me what her biggest dream was or her greatest fear, I wouldn't know. And she wouldn't know mine either. Deep down, I carried an emptiness, a hole in my chest that I tried to fill with extra work, TV series, and online purchases I didn't even need. It was a constant hum of dissatisfaction, low enough to be ignored most of the time, but deafening on sleepless nights. I looked in the mirror and saw a 40-year-old woman with a stable life, a life many would dream of having. But I felt nothing. It was like watching a movie about someone else's life. I remember a conversation with my mom, a week before the accident. She told me, with that same worried look, that I seemed tired. Not physically tired, but soul tired. I just gave a weak smile and changed the subject. How could I explain to her that I felt like a fraud? That my whole life felt like a play where I was the lead, but I'd forgotten all my lines. No one knew this, just me and the four walls of my apartment. That's why that afternoon on the bicycle was so magical. For the first time in years, the hum had stopped. The sun, the wind, the music, all of it had filled the emptiness, even if only for a few minutes. I felt alive, truly, and I clung to that feeling with all my might, not knowing it was a farewell, I thought my biggest problem was the emptiness, the lack of purpose. But what happened next showed me that sometimes you have to be completely broken to truly rebuild yourself. Looking back now, I see the signs. They were everywhere. Small, red flashing alerts that my gray routine had taught me to ignore. The universe, or perhaps God, tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. The day of the accident began with a dream. I was in a very green field, but the sky was completely white with no sun, no clouds, just an infinite milky light. And I had no shadow. I walked and looked down, and nothing. It was as if I didn't truly exist in that place. I woke up with my heart pounding in my throat, with a strange feeling of absence. But the alarm clock rang. The smell of coffee filled the house, and I swept the feeling under the rug. It was just a dream, after all. At work, everything seemed out of place. The pen I always used disappeared from my desk. The computer system crashed 3 times on the same spreadsheet. Small, silly things. But added together, they created static in the air, a dissonance. At lunchtime, Carla from finance looked at me out of nowhere and said, "Wow, Anna, you look like you're saying goodbye." We both laughed, but her gaze was serious. I felt a chill down my spine, but I covered it up with some joke. Little did I know her words were a prophecy. The clearest sign, the one that haunts me to this day, came at 4 in the afternoon. My cell phone vibrated. It was Marina, my sister. I was in the middle of a meeting and declined the call. A minute later, an audio message arrived. Her voice was strange. It wasn't panic. It was a scared calm. "Anna, call me as soon as you can. I just felt something bad. A tightness in my chest with your name. I just want to hear your voice and know you're okay." I heard that and felt my blood run cold. My first reaction was to call her back. But the meeting continued. My boss asked me a question, and the moment passed. I thought, I'll call her when I leave on my way home. That decision sealed my fate. When the workday ended, I was laden with all that weird energy from the day. The dream, Carla's comment, my sister's message. It was a weight on my back. I could have taken the subway, gone straight home, and called Marina. But the sun outside was beautiful, golden, almost calling to me, and I thought a bike ride would clear my head. I needed that feeling of peace the bicycle gave me. I wanted to cycle away from that premonition. And for an instant, it worked. As soon as I got on the bicycle and put on my headphones, the outside world disappeared. The wind, the sun, the music, all of it created a perfect bubble around me. The weight disappeared. The anxiety dissolved. I felt light, happy, alive. Today, I know that wasn't true peace. It was the silence before the scream. It was the calm in the eye of the hurricane. I was about 10 minutes from home. I remember seeing a black bird perched on a power line, staring at me. It didn't chirp. It just watched, fixedly. I looked away, uncomfortable. It was the last thing I saw clearly before the sound of tires screeching on the asphalt tore my bubble to pieces. And in that millisecond before impact, my sister's message echoed in my head. "I just want to hear your voice." And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that she wouldn't. What would you do if you felt the day was going to end badly? Would you change your routine or keep going, believing it was all in your head? Leave your opinion here in the comments. I really want to know. And if you have a story of intuition or a warning you couldn't ignore, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the stories I still have to tell will show you that we are more connected than we imagine. The sound tore through the air before the image made sense. A sharp screech of rubber against asphalt, a desperate protest. I turned my head, and time stretched like elastic. That blur of metal coming towards me wasn't a blur. It was a car. Gray. I saw the sun's reflection on the windshield, so intense it hurt my eyes. And I saw the driver, a flash of his face, pale, with eyes wide with panic. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the cell phone in his hand. The impact wasn't a sound. It was an absence of sound. A punch in the world's gut that made everything silent for a millisecond. The universe hit the mute button. My bicycle disintegrated beneath me, and I flew. For an instant, I saw the blue sky and the treetops below, and the gray asphalt above. The world turned upside down. And then, darkness. When consciousness returned, in flashes, I was lying on the ground. The asphalt was hot on my back, a strange heat that seemed to drain life from me. I couldn't feel my legs. I tried to move my fingers, but it was as if they no longer belonged to me. The smell was the worst part. A sickening mix of burnt rubber, gasoline, and iron. The smell of my own blood. I saw the red and blue lights of sirens dancing on the tree leaves. A macabre party I hadn't been invited to. The voices. They were like a badly tuned radio, full of static. Pressure dropping fast. Multiple open fractures. I saw heavy boots moving around me, tense faces looking down. One of them, a young paramedic with freckles on his nose, looked into my eyes. I saw the pity in his gaze. He knew. He knew I wouldn't make it. And in that moment, the only thing on my mind, the only thing that mattered in the entire universe, was my sister's voice. I just want to hear your voice. And my last conscious thought, the last splinter of regret before everything went black, was, Marina, forgive me. I didn't call you back. And then, the pain disappeared. The fear disappeared. Regret dissolved into a peace I had never felt before. My body lay there, a broken cocoon on the asphalt. But I was rising. I saw myself down there, a broken rag doll, surrounded by strangers desperately trying to bring me back. I heard the sharp, continuous beep of the heart monitor, the soundtrack of my own departure. That sound wasn't panic. It was liberation. The flat line on the screen wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a new road. But what awaited me on the other side of that road? The abyss that opened. Not even in my wildest dreams could I have imagined. And the mission I would be given there would change not only my life, but everyone's life in that courtroom. What do you think goes through someone's mind in their last second of life? Is regret really the last thing we feel? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe there's something beyond, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because my journey was just beginning. That sharp, continuous sound wasn't an alarm of the end. It was a departing bell. The first sensation was lightness. A lightness I didn't know was possible to feel. You know when you carry very heavy shopping bags for a long time, and then suddenly you drop them? It's that feeling, only multiplied by 1,000. The weight of my body, the weight of my bills, the weight of my worries, all of it was left behind, on the asphalt. I floated, slowly, like a soap bubble rising in the air. I looked down and saw myself. I saw that 40-year-old woman, the accountant, Anna, a broken rag doll. Her hair was spread in a dark puddle that I knew was my own blood. The paramedics were stepping back, one of them taking off his gloves with a gesture of defeat. The young man with freckles, who had looked into my eyes, now had his face turned. He couldn't face it anymore. No one there knew, but I was fine. For the first time in a long time, I was perfectly fine. The world below began to lose focus. The red and blue lights of the sirens transformed into blurs of paint, mixing into each other. The voices, the sounds of the street, everything became muffled, as if I were diving into very, very calm water. The smell of burnt rubber disappeared, giving way to nothing. Not a comforting void, but an absence. A silence that, when it lasted too long, began to throb. I was no longer rising. I was being pulled. Gently, yes, but to where? The feeling now was that the invitation to come home had an unknown urgency, almost a demand. And then, the darkness became absolute. A dense darkness, without temperature, without sound, without time. It wasn't the empty void I expected. It was a nothingness that seemed to watch, an infinite gloom where I had no body, but I felt trapped. And in that silence that once seemed peaceful, I began to hear whispers. Not clear voices, but a cacophony of thoughts, emotions, and fears that weren't mine. They floated, enveloped me, wanting to consume me in that vastness. It was in this silent torment of the abyss that the darkness tore open. It wasn't like turning on a light. It was as if the universe itself opened before me, a white, milky light that didn't hurt the eyes. On the contrary, it warmed. It was a good warmth, like the morning sun on your skin after a cold night. I was no longer floating. I was immersed in that light, as if it were air and water at the same time. All my fear, all my confusion, simply dissolved. It was a feeling of belonging so strong, so deep, that I started to cry. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of someone who had finally come home after a very, very long journey. But what happened next was even more incredible. In that sea of light, I realized I wasn't alone. A presence began to form before me, an energy that made all that light seem small. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, who it was. Do you believe the other side is a place of peace? Or do you think it's something our mind creates not to fear the end? Leave your opinion here in the comments. I read them all. And if you want to know what I was told in that place and how it changed everything, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the most shocking part of my story is about to begin. That sharp, continuous sound wasn't an alarm of the end. It was a departing bell. The first sensation was lightness, a lightness I didn't know was possible to feel. You know when you carry very heavy shopping bags for a long time, and then suddenly you drop them? It's that feeling, only multiplied by 1,000. The weight of my body, the weight of my bills, the weight of my worries, all of it was left behind, on the asphalt. I floated, looking down and seeing that 40-year-old woman, the accountant, Anna, a broken rag doll. No one there knew, but I was perfectly fine. The world below began to lose focus. The lights and sounds of the street became muffled, as if I were diving into very, very calm water. And then, the darkness tore open. It wasn't like turning on a light. It was as if the universe itself opened before me, a white, milky light that didn't hurt the eyes. On the contrary, it warmed. It was a hug made of light. All my fear, all my confusion, simply dissolved. It was a feeling of belonging so strong, so deep, that I started to cry. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of someone who had finally come home after a very, very long journey. And then I saw him. In that sea of light, I realized I wasn't alone. A figure of light began to form before me. I couldn't see a face, details, clothes. It was just a human form made of the purest and most compassionate energy imaginable. But I didn't have to ask. With every fiber of my being, with a certainty born deep in my soul, I knew. It was Jesus. He didn't speak with words, but I understood everything in my heart, as if his thoughts were planted directly into my mind. He didn't show me a movie of my life. He made me feel. I felt the weight of every "I love you" I failed to say to my mother. I felt my sister's loneliness on the night she sent me that message, and I didn't reply. I felt the emptiness of my own days, the succession of hours I lived on autopilot, without purpose. The revelation was devastating and, at the same time, liberating. My emptiness wasn't bad luck. It was a choice. The choice to live on the surface, afraid to dive deep. And then his voice, calm and powerful, echoed within me. Anna, your mission on Earth is not over yet. There is a lesson you need to take back. I didn't want to go back. The peace was addictive, the acceptance complete. Why? I asked without using my mouth. What lesson is so important? The figure of light extended a hand of energy and touched my heart. And the message came, clear as crystal. Forgiveness. You must forgive the man who did this to you. Not for him, but for you. Anger is an anchor that prevents you from living the fullness I planned. Go back and free yourself through forgiveness. Forgive? The man who killed me? Who took me from my life, even if it was gray? My human part, Anna the accountant, screamed that it was impossible. But there, in that place, bathed in that unconditional love, Earth's logic no longer made sense. I understood. It wasn't a request. It was a gift, the key to my own healing, to fill the emptiness I carried. And then, I felt a force pulling me back, gently. The light began to fade. I looked one last time at that presence of peace, which nodded benevolently. I wasn't being expelled. I was being sent back with a mission. Do you think forgiveness is a gift for the recipient or for the giver? Tell me in the comments what you think. And if you want to know what I did with that forgiveness and how it shocked an entire courtroom, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because my return to life was even more painful and surprising than my departure. The peace of that place was addictive. An ocean of acceptance where there was no yesterday or tomorrow, just a perfect and eternal now. My first reaction, the reaction of 40-year-old Anna who just wanted to rest, was to refuse, to stay. I didn't want to go back to a broken body, to a life of pain, to a world where anger and forgiveness existed. I wanted to stay there, dissolved in that light, forever. I tried to argue, without words, that I wasn't strong enough for that mission. To forgive the man who destroyed me? It was asking too much. But the answer I received was not an order. It was a wave of understanding that washed over my soul. I felt in that instant the pain of that driver, not as an excuse, but as a fact. I saw a flash of his life, a desperate father, a stupid mistake, a regret that would consume him forever. And I understood that forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about me. Anger, resentment, they were heavy chains. And if I went back dragging that, I would be alive, but I wouldn't be free. Remaining angry would be like choosing to stay trapped in a cell, even with the door open. There, in that light, I understood that forgiveness was my only chance to truly live again, and I accepted. The farewell was silent. There was no goodbye, just a feeling of, see you later. The figure of light, the presence of Jesus, did not move away from me. It was his world that began to shrink, like a star fading on the horizon. That warmth that enveloped me began to recede, and I felt a cold that was not physical. It was a cold of longing, of leaving my true home behind. I began to be pulled back, not violently, but with the inevitability of a receding tide. The light became a point. And then, nothing. Only darkness and speed. The return was a punch, a violent jolt that threw me back into matter. If leaving the body was like dropping a weight, coming back was like being crushed by it. The first thing I felt was pain. A pain so overwhelming, so complete, that there was no room for anything else. Every broken bone, every exposed nerve, every cell of my body screamed in agony. The celestial silence was replaced by the deafening beep of machines. And then, the air. It invaded my lungs like shards of glass. I opened my eyes suddenly with a gasp that was more a scream than a breath. The first thing I saw was a white ceiling, with a fluorescent lamp that hurt my eyes. I heard voices shouting, full of panic and surprise. "She's back! We have a pulse! It's a miracle!" I was back, trapped, bleeding, hurting. But underneath all that chaos, in the center of my being, his message still shone, intact. His peace was still with me, not around me, but within me. It was a hot ember in the midst of the storm. I came back to a broken body, but with a soul that, for the first time in my life, was whole. If you were given a second chance, but with an almost impossible condition to fulfill, would you have the courage to accept? Tell me in the comments what you would do in my place. And if you want to know how my recovery went and what happened on the day I finally came face to face with the man who killed me, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because human justice was about to meet God's justice. The first sound was my own scream, a ragged sound that scraped my throat as air invaded my lungs as if it were fire. Opening my eyes was like staring at the sun. The cold, white light of the hospital ceiling was an aggression after the warm, welcoming light I had just left. Machines beeped in different tones, a symphony of electronic panic. And the pain, my God, the pain. It was a heavy blanket, made of broken glass, covering me from head to toe. Every breath was a stab. Coming back was not a gift. It was a sentence. I saw the shocked faces of the doctors and nurses crowding over me. "She's back!" one of them shouted, eyes wide. "It's impossible. Her brain was without oxygen for too long." They talked about me as if I wasn't there, poking, measuring, trying to understand the miracle with the cold logic of science. But I wasn't paying attention to them, because underneath all that pain, in the center of my being, The ember of that peace was still lit. I wasn't alone in that broken body. He had come back with me. But the real ordeal began when they entered the room. My mother, her face aged 10 years in a few hours, a mask of tears and relief. She hugged me with a care that seemed afraid of breaking me again, and her scent, the scent of home, almost broke me into pieces. And then, behind her, I saw Marina, my sister. Her eyes were red and swollen, but when they met mine, something passed between us that didn't need words. She came closer, took my hand, and her chin trembled. "I felt it, Anna," she whispered. "I felt when you left, and I felt when you came back." In that touch, in that gaze, the abyss that existed between us simply disappeared. For the first time, I didn't see my younger sister. I saw a part of my soul. The following months were a blur of physical therapy, surgeries, and pain that became my constant companion. Learning to walk again at 40 is a humility lesson I wouldn't wish on anyone. Every step with the walker was a marathon. My life, once an organized spreadsheet, was now a chaos of medication schedules and painful exercises. The old Anna would have drowned in anger, in self-pity, but something had changed. My mother looked at me, confused. "You're too calm," she said one day, as she helped me sit up. "Anyone would be screaming, cursing the world. You seem at peace." I just smiled. How could I explain that? Even with my body in ruins, my soul had never been so whole. The first time his name was mentioned, a detective came to my hospital room. Marcos, 28 years old. He had been drinking, looked at his cell phone for a second, and his life, and mine, changed forever. He was arrested red-handed, awaiting trial. My family, who was in the room, filled with righteous anger. I heard words like, "monster," "he should rot in jail," and I didn't feel any of that. I felt a weight of responsibility. The detective turned to me, a notepad in his hand. "When you're ready, we'll need your testimony to ensure the maximum sentence. He can't get away with it." Everyone looked at me, awaiting my confirmation, my cry for revenge. But the only thing echoing in my mind was his voice. "Go back and free yourself through forgiveness." And I knew that my greatest battle hadn't been on the operating table. It was just beginning. What's harder, the recovery of the body or the healing of the soul? Tell me in the comments what you think. And if you want to know what happened on the day I finally came face to face with the man who killed me, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because human justice was about to collide with God's justice. My old life no longer existed. The Excel spreadsheet, which once governed my days, had been permanently deleted. In its place, a blank space, frightening, and, at the same time, full of possibilities. The world seemed to have more colors. I noticed the blue hue of the sky seen from the hospital window, the taste of an orange slice, the warmth of my mother's hand on mine. Before, I saw life. Now, I felt it. My relationships were the first to feel the earthquake. My mother, poor thing, didn't understand. She brought me newspaper clippings about similar cases, with lawyers who achieved maximum sentences. Her face contorted into a mask of pain and anger. "He'll pay, daughter. I swear he'll pay for every tear we shed." She spoke of revenge as if it were medicine, the only antidote to our suffering. And I looked at her, at that woman I loved more than anything, and saw that anger was consuming her, imprisoning her as much as my broken body imprisoned me to that bed. No one knew about my mission. To them, my calmness was a symptom of shock, of trauma. Little did they know I had never been saner. Marina was the only one who came close to understanding. One afternoon, when we were alone, she held my hand and, in a low voice, said, "There's something different about you, Anna. It's not just the accident. Your gaze. It's like you've seen something on the other side." I froze. My eyes filled with tears, the first ones that weren't from physical pain. And I told her. I told her about the light, about the peace, about the voice that echoed in my heart. I didn't use his name. I couldn't. But I spoke of the mission, of forgiveness. Marina didn't call me crazy. She just squeezed my hand harder and cried with me, a cry of relief, of understanding. In that moment, I was no longer alone on my journey. But what happened next tested me to my limit. There was a night, about 2 weeks before the trial, when the pain was unbearable. The medication didn't work. Every nerve in my body seemed to be on fire. And in that darkness, in that agony, the old Anna screamed within me. Anger came like a wave of lava, burning everything. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to feel an ounce of the pain I was feeling. I hit the mattress with my clenched fist, hating my weakness, hating the mission, hating the request made of me. For a moment, I wanted to throw everything away and call for revenge, as everyone expected. That's when I closed my eyes, exhausted, and the image of that light returned. The warmth, the acceptance, the unconditional love that asked for nothing in return. I remembered the message, not for him, but for you, and I understood. Anger wasn't punishing Marcos, it was poisoning me, chaining me to that hospital bed in a way no fracture ever could. Forgiving wasn't forgetting. It was choosing not to carry that weight anymore. It was my only chance one day to truly walk again, not just with my legs, but with my soul. That night, amidst tears of pain, my conviction was born, and with it, my new purpose. I wasn't just going to forgive. I was going to use my story to show people that there is a way out of the darkness, that the second chance wasn't just mine. It could be everyone's. Do you believe that a greater purpose can be born from the greatest pain someone can feel? Or do you think that's just a way for us to move forward? Leave your honest opinion here in the comments. I really want to know. And if you want to see how this decision unfolded in court, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the stories about forgiveness and second chances are just beginning. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The judge looked at me, not as a witness, but as if he were seeing a ghost. His eyes, which were once hard and professional, were now filled with an almost childish confusion. I saw the prosecutor shake his head, incredulous, as if I had just torn up the penal code in front of him. My mother, in the front row, had her face bathed in tears, but they were no longer tears of anger. They were tears of shock. She didn't understand. No one there understood. But Marcos understood. He lifted his head, his face ruined by crying, and for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a broken man, receiving a grace he never imagined possible. And in that look, I saw my mission being fulfilled. My decision wasn't an act of sanctity. It was an act of pure selfishness. Because I understood in that light that anger was an anchor tying me to the hot asphalt of that day. Every time I felt hatred, I would be back in that scene, bleeding, broken, hearing the sound of the heart monitor beeping my end. Forgiving Marcos wasn't to free him from men's prison. It was to free myself from the prison I was building in my own soul. The true sentence wasn't his, it was mine. And I chose freedom. Today, my life no longer has the gray color of a spreadsheet. It has the colors of my mother's hand holding mine during physical therapy. It has the sound of Marina's laughter, who now calls me every day not out of obligation, but just to hear my voice. Physical pain still visits me on cold nights. The scars on my body tell the story of the accident. But the scars on my soul, those were healed by a light that medicine will never be able to explain. I exchanged a stable job for a purpose. I exchanged superficial peace for a joy born deep in my chest. A joy that doesn't depend on the sun outside, because it shines from within. You don't have to die for 20 minutes to get a second chance. Your second chance can be today. It can be the decision to forgive that person who hurt you, not for them, but for you. It can be the choice to let go of the weight of that resentment you've carried for years. Life is too short to live chained to the past. My journey to the other side taught me that heaven isn't a place you go after you die. It's a state of peace you can choose to live here and now. So I ask you, what is the anchor holding you back from truly living? What weight do you need to release today to finally feel free? Or do you, like me, need to confront the abyss before finding your own light? Leave your answer here in the comments. I really want to read and understand your story. And if this message touched you in any way, if you believe that forgiveness sets you free, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because my journey is far from over, and the stories of second chances and everyday miracles I have to share might be the key you're looking for to your own freedom.